With gas prices in 2026 holding high for the third month in a row, some people are looking to get into an electric vehicle, but they don't have $50 to $60, maybe even $70,000 to spend on an EV, so they're looking to save some money. But then again, you also don't want to get some bargain basement vehicle that can't even do 300 miles on a charge. So this is the only vehicle that I believe can solve that problem. This is the 2020. But isn't the Nissan Leaf the cheapest EV with 300 miles of range? The Nissan Leaf has 300 miles? Well, hold on, because that only has 300 miles on the base trim. It's a way smaller vehicle, way less comfortable, and once you factor in the dealer rebates on this Equinox EV, the Leaf is basically the same price. So I don't understand your point, so go away. Okay. All right, he's gone now. Anyway, this is the 2026 Equinox EV. I'm gonna take you guys on a full tour, show you some of its quirks and features and pros and cons. I'm gonna take it on a full drive, give you guys my final thoughts, and tell you why this is the best value EV you can buy today from a dealership. It's really hot out. Oh wow, it's a lot brighter in here and a heck of a lot cooler because it's air conditioned. Okay, well that worked. Let's get started up at the front because that's where I think the best looking angle of this vehicle is. That front light bar. Starting up here at the front, you have this nice LED front light bar. This will turn into your turn signal when you indicate and it'll flash yellow. It'll also dim other parts of the light bar to make that more visible. You have your Chevy bow tie. You can get this black if you want it. You have faux carbon fiber plastic around your headlights, which are automatic high beam capable, but they are not matrix, which I guess makes sense for such an inexpensive vehicle, relatively speaking. You have a front camera for your 360-degree parking view, a front license plate bracket, a little cover to insert a towing eyelet in case you need to pull it onto a flatbed. And speaking of this lower area, this is body color on LT trims, but on RS trims, it is gloss black, but honestly, I prefer this. You do have some arrow slits down here. Over there, you do have a lit reflector. Down here, you have more faux carbon fiber effect plastic, some vents to cool your battery, and that's pretty much it. It's a fairly simple front end design, but I really like it. Kind of does have a monobrow going on, but I don't mind that. And it definitely looks unique rolling down the road. Let's move under the hood. All right, let's pop the hood and talk about the powertrain on the 2026 Equinox EV. Now, notably, there is no front trunk under this hood, but you still can open this panel by double pulling on the hood latch inside the cabin. Once you lift up on the hood, you'll notice there are hood struts, which is a little bit interesting because A, not a lot of vehicles at this price point have hood struts, and B, this is an EV. You're not gonna really ever need to open the hood other than to fill the washer fluid. So it's kind of nice that it has hood struts considering that they're very much not necessary. Under here, you will find one of two drive units available in the Equinox EV. Every one, regardless if it's front wheel drive or all wheel drive, has this in the front under the hood. This is a permanent magnet motor that makes 220 horsepower and 242 pound-feet of torque. It does have a 9.85 to 1 gear reduction inside the transmission, although it's not really a transmission, it's more of a gearbox reduction drive because it's still a single speed. And you do have a physical parking pawl inside that transmission. You can see it activating right there. This means that when you put it into park, it will rock back and forth a little bit, but when you park on a hill, the electronic parking brake on the rear axle will activate, so all four wheels will be locked if you park on a steep hill, which is nice in the winter time. Other things to note about this drive unit is that it does not have a silicon carbide inverter, which is a bit unfortunate, which means it will not be as efficient at low power output, but since this is a fairly heavy vehicle, you're not really ever going to be in a scenario where you're at low power output. So I think the silicon IGBT inverter on this motor / drive unit works pretty well for this application, and it helps save some cost on the vehicle. Now, speaking of performance, this front-wheel drive model is capable of doing 0 to 60 in 7.5 seconds. Now, that's a bit on the sluggish side, and above 70 mile an hour, there's not a lot of passing power. So if you need more power, you can get all-wheel drive, which adds an additional induction motor to the rear axle that makes about 80 horsepower and 113 pound-feet of torque to bring your total up to 300 and 315 horsepower and pound-feet of torque, respectively. That'll drop your 0 to 60 down to about 5.6 seconds, which is 1.9 seconds faster than the front-wheel drive model you see here. However, it does cost about $3,000 extra, depending on the trim, and it will drop your range by about 15 to 20 miles. But I think that's worth it because it's not too expensive and it increases the performance dramatically, and it also makes this more useful when you're towing, although to be fair, it can't tow that much, so maybe it's not really worth mentioning, but I thought I might point it out. Under here, you'll also note that you have a heat pump and you have your washer fluid fuse box, coolant bottle, brake fluid, your 12-volt battery, and a bunch of other mechanical bits. Let's move down to the tires and wheels and talk about the suspension. All right, let's start up front with the wheels and tires. Up here, you have a 19-inch alloy wheel. This is standard on LT1 and LT2, but on the RS trim, you get a 21-inch alloy wheel, which I believe can be optioned on the LT trims if you spec it as an additional upgrade. These wheels are 6x120 bolt pattern, which makes sense because it is a fairly heavy vehicle weighing about 4,950 pounds. This wheel is wrapped in a Michelin Primacy all season in a 245/55 R19 size. The front suspension is a McPherson strut design, and the brakes up here are a 321mm rotor and a 2-piston front caliper on each side, of course. Let's move to the rear. In back here, you have the same wheel and tire as up front. You have a multi-link rear suspension and a 315mm rear rotor with a single piston caliper. Speaking of which, the brakes on this work really well for the weight. Let's cut to the braking test. All right, so I'm gonna get around 60. I'm going a little bit faster. Technically it doesn't matter because the draggy will track it anyway. Braking in 3, 2, 1. 60 to 0 in 3.17 seconds, 131.2 feet. Brakes work pretty good. One thing I forgot to mention about the suspension, this does have 6.4 inches of ground clearance. It has a 1,500-pound towing capacity, a 1,200-pound payload, right thereabouts, and the total GVWR is around 6,200 pounds for this vehicle. Up here on the front left fender of the Equinox EV, you have the charge port. Now, this is in a very bad location, and let me explain, because some chargers, i.e. Tesla superchargers or Tesla superchargers, have very short cables, which means you have to park this at an angle, usually taking up 2 or more parking spots in order for the cable to reach this charge port location. In my opinion, it should be on the back left, like a normal EV/Tesla, or in the front middle, like the old school Nissan Leaf. Here is the actual charge port itself. It's a very excessively, large door, which is not power operated, but I'm okay with that. In here, you have the CCS1 charge connector, which is a little bit outdated for 2026, but I think in 2027, they're gonna switch it over to NACS. You do have an 11.5 kilowatt onboard charger that's 48 amps at 240 volts, or if you get a fully loaded RS all-wheel drive, you can get a 19.2 kilowatt, which is an 80 amp onboard charger, and that also allows you to do 3.2 kilowatts of vehicle to load capability out the charge port. So let's say if you wanted to power some accessories through 120 volt plugs, you can buy an adapter and plug it in there. Not all Equinoxes can do that. Only the ones with a 19.2 kilowatt onboard charger. What every Equinox can do, regardless of what onboard charger it has, is power your house. This can do 9.6 kilowatts out of the charge port to power your home, but you have to get some sort of proprietary GM energy charge box, and it's like $2,000 for that. But if you really want home backup power, that is a solution. Below it, pulling out this little flap, which kind of just dangles around, you do have the additional pins for fast charging, and this can charge up to 150 kilowatts, at least in theory. So let me explain the big problem with the Equinox EV, which is the battery pack. This is a 10 module Ultium pack. Now, if you know anything about Ultium in the GM vehicles, you'll know that they all use the same NCMA battery modules. This one only has 10, but some vehicles like the Silverado EV Max range can have up to 24 of these battery modules. This means that this is the smallest of the Ultium packs in the lineup. This has a GM quoted capacity of 85 kilowatt hours, although independent testing has seen closer to 90 to 91 kilowatt hours. So I think it's safe to call this a 90 kilowatt hour NCMA battery pack that can give this front wheel drive Equinox EV about 319 miles of range or 307 miles of range on the all-wheel drive version of the same vehicle. If you get the RS trim with a little bit larger wheels, your range does drop a little bit, but I think it still remains over 300 miles in that trim. The big problem with this battery pack is the voltage, and let me explain. All right, welcome to the whiteboard. I'm going to explain why battery voltage is so important in electric vehicles, show you what it does to your charging speed, your charging curve, powertrain efficiency, and a bunch of other stuff. You must know wattage equals voltage times amperage. A typical EV has a nominal pack voltage of 400 volts. Now, realistically, it's a little bit lower than this, and when you charge it, it's going to increase, and when you discharge it, it's going to decrease below 400, but we're going to use 400 because nominal voltage is usually around 50% state of charge, and that's that's typically the best way to measure battery pack voltage. You multiply this by 500. And the reason why this is 500 is that your CCS chargers, which is what most vehicles use, and even if they use NACS, they still use the CCS protocol. CCS chargers are limited to 500 amps typically. There are some notable exceptions, such as Tesla superchargers, which I know they're not CCS, but they speak CCS, which can output well over 700 amps to a Cybertruck. Not every CCS charger, in fact, most cannot go over 500 amps. Now, if you do the math here, 400 times 500 is 200,000, which also just means 200 kilowatts. If, for example, you have a Hyundai Ioniq 5 and your example battery nominal voltage is around 800 volts. If you multiply this by 500 amps, you get 400 kilowatts. So when you double your voltage, you double your charging power. And this is useful information to know because I'm going to demonstrate something. Now, like I mentioned, battery voltage will increase your charging speed if you are pulling the same current. Now, I'm going to describe what the problem is with the Equinox EV. It has a 10 module Ultium battery pack. Now, an Ultium module is around 29 volts nominal. It's actually more like 28.8 volts nominal, but we're just going to say 29 for simplicity. If you multiply these two, that is 290 volts nominal. And this is your nominal. So when you're completely dead, your voltage is going to be lower than this, which I will explain why that is problematic later. Now, if you're pulling the max 500 amps from a typical CCS station times 290, that is only 145 kilowatts. With charging current, as you increase your amperage, your heat increases exponentially. So let's say you're pulling 500 amps up here, but an 800 volt EV is pulling 250 amps down here to pull the same 200 kilowatts. Well, you can see your heat is way higher when you're pulling so much extra current because it increases exponentially, not linearly. Since the Equinox EV is such low voltage, you have to pull an incredible amount of current to get the advertised 145 kilowatts, which isn't even that much power for a typical EV. For example, a Model 3, which is a 400 volt class EV, can charge at 250 kilowatts, although it is actually pulling more than 500 amps because Tesla does what Tesla does. But my second point revolves around nominal pack voltage. Now, I just told you that the Equinox EV has a 290 nominal pack voltage. But remember, this is not the actual voltage of the battery pack at any given state of charge. If you're at a low state of charge, it could be as low as 220. If you're at a high state of charge, it could be maybe as high as 330. Now, batteries typically charge with a curve like this. Say this is 0, this is 100. This is just a very rough curve. Thing is, if this is 150 kilowatts, which like I mentioned, 290 can't actually hit 150, you'd have to be at 300 volts. But the thing is, if you're starting at 220 volts down here, you're only gonna get maybe 120 kilowatts for the first bit, and then it'll come up as pack voltage rises. And then, since you're pulling 500 amps, which is a lot, you're going to overheat the battery and it's gonna dip down like this, and you're not gonna have a very good charging curve. Now, the AC compressor can handle most of this, but not quite all of it, because I have noticed if you keep the AC on while you're charging, it can tank your charging speeds. So this is the second thing that I wanted to point out to you, and there's two more, but let's move on to the third one because that is another gotcha when it comes to DC fast charging. Now, my third point stems around GM's advertised charging rate of 150 kilowatts. Now, the Equinox EV can hit this. Let's say you're at about 25-30% state of charge, you pull it with a preconditioned battery, you're pulling 500 amps, all is good. The problem is, if you go to, let's say, 150 kilowatt EA charger, so you have 150 kilowatt, and let's just say this is station rated at 150 kilowatt, usually 150 kilowatt charger can only give you 350 amps. If you multiply, let's just say 300 in this hypothetical, because you're at a higher state of charge, multiply that by 350, you're not going to get 150 kilowatts, you're gonna get maybe 100. So you're plugging it into a 150 kilowatt station, but you're only getting 100. And this also goes for lower power stations. Let's say a Tesla can get 80 kilowatts out of a given charger, and that given charger gives you 200 amps. Well, if you do 200 times 300, that's only 60 kilowatts. So you're not even getting the advertised power out of an 80 kilowatt station. This is the third problem. And the fourth problem stems around actually driving the vehicle. Now, let's assume in this hypothetical that you're just cruising down the highway and you go to floor it because you need to pass someone. Problem with this is, since the pack voltage is, let's just say 290 in this hypothetical, you need to pull a ton of power to get the advertised 220 horsepower, which is about 171 kilowatts. So you need to pull nearly 600 amps, and that generates a ton of heat. And the problem with this is that this will quickly overheat the inverter inside the Equinox EV. That's only part of the problem, because when you floor it, you're gonna overheat the inverter, and as you go faster and accelerate harder, you're gonna lose power output. And this also means means that when your battery pack voltage is even lower, let's say you're at like 5% state of charge and your pack voltage is down at 240. Well, now even if you're pulling the same 600 amps, you're not making 171 kilowatts. You're down near probably 140, 150. You know, it's not going to accelerate as fast at low states of charge. But then again, that's only half the problem, because the other part of the problem stems off of vehicle efficiency. Like I mentioned before, if you go like, oh, that's not a good graph. If you do this, you know, it's just like this, you know, exponential heat with amperage. If you're pulling a lot of amps to just do basic things, let's say you need 30 kilowatts out of it and you're at 300 volts, you need to do 100 amps of power out to get 30 kilowatts. That is a lot more current than most EVs pull to get 30 kilowatts out of the motor, which means you're generating a lot of heat, and that heat has to be dissipated through the vehicle's cooling system, which means you're actually going to be pulling more power out of the pack to do that, which means your efficiency is going to be lower. So I got on my range test 2.9 miles kilowatt hour. I would suspect that with a higher voltage battery architecture in the same car, you could probably see at least 0.2 to 0.3 miles kilowatt hour better just from thermal efficiency alone. Now I know I just made this sound like a big deal, but it really isn't as much, as long as you know what you're getting into, because as long as you plug into the highest power charger you have available, precondition, arrive at a high state of charge, you're gonna get what GM advertises out of it. And the charging curve is still decent, even with climate control on and a high amperage coming in through that charge port into the battery pack. It's not the end of the world. It's just gonna take a little bit longer than if GM had just put the 12 or the 14 module battery in it and get a nominal pack voltage of closer to like 380 to 400. Obviously that's a way bigger battery and it would weigh more, so you'd be less efficient, but you'd have more range and it would charge faster. So obviously I understand why they did what they did, because they're trying to save money and they want to use the same modules and architecture, which makes sense. They can just scale it down and make it fit in a smaller vehicle, so that makes sense. And if you charge at home, this literally does not matter, because level 2 charging will always be at whatever voltage is coming out of the wall. It does not matter what the pack voltage is, because the onboard charger handles that. So if you do mostly home charging, this is a great option, because A, it's fairly cheap, B, the battery is fairly big, and C, the onboard charger can be fairly powerful with that 19.2 kilowatt option. And because the efficiency is still fairly decent, even though I made it seem like it's very inefficient, the wind and stuff like that is gonna make more of a difference than the powertrain efficiency. I'm just giving you a reason that you might wanna spend a little bit less on an Equinox than you may otherwise would. That's just all I'm trying to do here, is just benefit you guys if you're looking to buy one of these. And that's just something that you guys need to be mindful of when you buy one or when you own one, is plug into the highest power charger you can find. Make sure you're preconditioned, don't run climate control, and if you can, charge at home. It's gonna save you time, and it's gonna save you money too, because the higher amperage you pull from a charger, the more charging losses there are. So that means it's gonna cost more for the same amount of energy. Anyway, that was way too much words. Let's get back to the review and we'll hop in the interior and show you guys around. Welcome back. Now let's talk about some other exterior details. You'll notice that your power mirrors are not, but they are power adjust, just not power fold. They are heated and have blind spot monitoring as standard, and you can see that there is little cameras on the bottom. That is part of the optional on the base trim, but standard on every other trim, 360-degree camera package. You have some chrome trim. This is specific to the LT2 and higher trims. The base trim has black plastic. You also have silver roof rails, which also do not come on the base model. Down here you have your Equinox or Equinox, I don't know which way you say it. It has to be blue because it's electric, because they have the gas Equinox, so people are gonna be like, looks the same but different. Before we hop inside the Equinox EV, let's talk about the locks and keys. Now, unfortunately, there is no phone as a key on the Equinox EV T-He. But you do still have the My Chevrolet app, where you can lock, unlock, remote start, open the hatch, I believe, and check the state of charge. Although, to be honest, I don't think that's that useful, because you still have to carry the key fob to drive the car anyway. So the mobile app is just icing on the cake, but it is there if you want it. Here is the key fob. You do have lock, unlock, remote start, and panic, and remote start is standard across the board. You do have power retracting door handles as standard, and when you lock it, they are flush with the body. You can see they just auto-presented because the key is close to the car. If you want to, you can press the door handle right here and they will auto-present and unlock. And when you put your handle behind the handle, or when you put your hand behind the handle, it'll unlock the door. If you want to lock the door from the outside, you can press right here and the door handle will retract, and now the car is locked. Weirdly though, if you put your hand behind the door handle, it tries to unlock, but if you do it again, it tries to unlock every single time you even graze the back of the door handle, because it's capacitive. The door's already unlocked. Why are you trying to unlock the door that's already unlocked? Anyway, let's hop inside. Hopping into the driver's seat of the Chevrolet Equinox EV, you'll notice that you have a pretty nice feeling door handle, and the door is fairly weighty. Hopping in here and closing the door, quality door thunk, and the car automatically starts up because it knows once you get in here that there's no start button, obviously, so it just powers on the vehicle, and if it doesn't power on, you can just place your foot on the brake pedal and it'll do the same thing. And to shut the vehicle off, you can just open the door and it'll power off, or you can click the vehicle off button on the screen right here, and that'll shut it off. You'll notice that you have a red LED projected up onto the windshield. It's not necessarily a heads-up display, but that is for your collision avoidance systems to alert the driver that, hey, you're about to run into something, hit the frickin' brake pedal. Unfortunately, you can see the dash reflecting in the windshield, which is a bit of a design flaw of the Equinox EV. Speaking of the dash, the materials up here are fairly good. You have nice soft touch leatherette. These blue trim pieces right here with ambient lighting built in. This is exclusive to the LT2 trim. I believe the RS also has ambient lighting, but it's a different color. And the base LT1 doesn't get the ambient lighting, unfortunately, and I think it's just basic black. On the door panel, you do have more soft touch leatherette right here and right here. Down here, you have hard scratchier plastics. On the door, you do have express down and up for the driver window, but only express down for the other windows. Power mirrors, you can't fold them. Power, like I mentioned on the exterior tour. Lock and unlock control. Over here, you have this nice twisty air vent, which is nice to see. Parking brake, hatch popper. Let's talk about the seats. So you do have these fairly nice Evo-Tex seats, they call them. They're perforated, but not ventilated unless you get the comfort package on LT2 and RS. You do have a nice cloth trim. This passenger seat, while it is only 4-way manual adjust forward and backward, if you get the comfort package on the LT2 and RS, you can height adjust the passenger seat. The driver's seat, on the other hand, is 8-way power adjust, and that is standard except on the base model Equinox 1 LT or LT1 without the comfort package. The seats are heated, like I mentioned, and on the base model, you have to get the comfort package to get heated seats, but heated seats are standard on every other trim. You do have a nice leather-wrapped heated steering wheel, which is standard across the board, again, other than on that very base model. The steering column is 4-way manual adjust. You can go up and down and in and out. Plenty of adjustment there. You do have a column shifter like this. You have your turn signal stock with your wipers and your rear wiper. You have a regen paddle on the back of the steering wheel. You have your cruise control settings. This does have adaptive cruise control on every trim, and you can get Super Cruise, which will automatically steer hands-free for you on many highways, although they have to be mapped. You have your 11-inch driver information display with tons of different views to flip through. You even have a full screen map view right there. You'll notice that you have a very large 17.7-inch standard infotainment system right here. It does not have Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, but I will do a full infotainment system review to convince the skeptical people that this is actually a very, very good infotainment system, and I would be plenty happy with it because I'm not really a huge fan of Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. As long as the built-in maps are good, which it is because it is Google-based and it is fully functional Google Maps, I'm perfectly happy with it. And if you want to download your streaming services on here, you can just sign into Google Play, download YouTube Music, download Spotify, whatever you want, you can download it on here and you can listen to your music directly through the car, which A, sounds better because you don't have as much Bluetooth compression, and B, is just more convenient because you don't have to link your phone up every time. Speaking of the sound system, it is 6 speakers, and let's do a sound system test, shall we? All right, I've loaded up the copyright-free house music for the audio test. Let's set the volume to probably there. We'll reset the equalizer. Let me do that. Reset. On the sound system, actually a little bit better than I was expecting. Once you play with the equalizer, the bass is actually decent for no subwoofer. It's not amazing, like it's a little bit muddy when you crank the bass, but honestly, once you mess with the equalizer, it's actually not bad. This is probably how I would have it set up. Sound system's not bad. I just think it would have been better if they would have offered an upgraded sound system. Welcome back from the sound system test. It sounds okay. It is kind of a bummer that you can't get a better sound system in the Equinox EV. You can only get the 6-speaker system you see here, but it is standard on the bass trim, so you're not really skimping out on that. Other things to note in here, you do have physical volume knobs and climate controls. This is a single zone automatic climate control if you don't get the comfort package on the LT2 and RS. If you do get the comfort pack, you have dual zone automatic, but on every other one, it's just single zone. You do have a nice 5G hotspot as standard across the board, and I don't think you have to pay for it through OnStar, so that's nice to see. In here you have a large, or fairly large, center console space with a basket, and you can, goes down pretty deep in there. You do have wireless phone charging, which is standard on LT2. I don't believe the base model can get that at all. You do have USB-C ports, another spot, I guess, to put your phone. I don't know, but it's not very deep. You do have more storage down here, a glove box, although I don't think the glove box can lock, which is a bit unfortunate. Up here, you do have some sun visors, which do slide, and when you open the vanity mirror, you'll notice that these ones are equipped with lights, but I don't think the base model has lights, which is honestly really cost cut. Not sure why that is. You do have a auto dimmable mirror, no home link buttons up here. I'm not sure if the Equinox EV has home link. I would assume so, but I don't see a button in the infotainment to do it, nor do I see one up on the mirror or on the roof. So maybe it doesn't have home link. Up here you do have your hazard light button, and you do not have a sunroof, but I believe you can get one, but honestly I don't really care for sunroofs anyway. Overall, the interior in here, very simple where it needs to be, but nice where it needs to be. The materials in here are good. Everything is fit together pretty well. Overall, everything in here is very well executed for the price. Let's hop in the back seat because that's where a lot of people will be put in this vehicle, since I honestly think it's a pretty good Uber car. Anyway, let's hop in the back. All right, hopping into the rear seat. The driver's seat is set to my driving position at 6'2". And once I'm back here, you'll realize I have a decent amount of room. I have about 2 to 3 inches of leg room, about 1.5 inches of headroom with my head all the way up against the headrest. Although my thighs don't have a ton of support because the seat is a little bit shallow and it's a little bit low to the ground. You do have rear air vents, which are able to be controlled independently of the front climate control, although you have to do that from the front screen, which is a bit annoying. You do have 2 USB-C ports, a cubby down here, LED dome lights, grab handles, coat hooks, and in the door, you have a nice cubby. The window does go all the way down, more blue trim. And right here, you do have a flip down armrest with 2 cup holders, easy access to your ISOFIX anchor points, and a place to stow the seat belt when it's not in use so it doesn't rattle around. The only thing I think it's missing would be A, rear heated seats, but you can get that on the LT2 luxury package or comfort package in the RS with the comfort package. The other thing that it actually is missing is a way to recline the seats either forward for more cargo room or back for more passenger comfort. The seats are fixed in place and they only fold. The other thing I would like to see is a passenger seat back pocket. Like, come on, it doesn't save that much money. Other than that though, there's not really anything that's missing back here, and there's nothing that would like be complex, like a rear screen or like flipping cup holders that would break or something like that. It's very basic, and I think that means that this would be a very good Uber car because there's enough room back here and it's very comfortable on the highway for passengers. Let's move back to the cargo area because frankly, why not? I mean, you have to see it at some point, right? You guys care enough to watch it, do you? Oh. Well, I'm gonna show it to you anyway. Now moving around to the rear of the Equinox EV, let's talk about the styling before we get into the cargo area. You do have this nice light bar that goes all the way across the rear width of the vehicle that intersects your Chevy bow tie. Your reverse light is nestled in between this upper and lower element, and your brake light and turn signal is combined as a stop and turn lamp on the outer edge here, which is not very good for safety because A, it flashes red instead of amber, and B, it removes one of the brake lights. So if you're indicating while braking, you only have 3 brake lights. So that's a bit unfortunate, but US law allows that, which they shouldn't, but it is what it is. Up here, you do have a rear wiper, your 3rd brake light. There is a washer jet for that rear wiper underneath this nice duck lip spoiler. Over here, you have your Equinox badge. Down here, you have your license plate, a rear camera, and a washer jet for that rear camera, parking sensors, some more black plastic cladding, and the button to open the trunk. Now let's talk about how you actually get in here. There's 4 different ways. A, you can use the key fob. B, there's a button on the interior. C, you can press the button on the tailgate itself. And D, you can actually enable a setting in the infotainment system. So when you walk up to the car with the key in your pocket and wait a couple seconds, it'll automatically pop the tailgate and open it right up. But since I don't have that enabled, I have to press the button. One thing to note, this particular LT2 trim has a power liftgate. The base model does not have a power liftgate available. So if you want the power liftgate, you have to get the LT2 or the RS trim. And you can, of course, adjust the height and just hold down on that button to set a new height wherever you want the tailgate to open to. Let's move in a little little closer and talk about the cargo area. Now inside the cargo area, it's actually fairly large. You do have enough space in here to probably fit like 4 of me if I was all dead and folded up. Anyway, you do have a false floor, and under here you do have a nice deep cargo well where the EVSC is stored in this particular example. You have your tire inflator and sealant. This is where the jack would be. I think it's been removed in this vehicle. Here's your massive towing eyelet under here. You have a little vent. I presume that must be for the onboard charger or something like that. Right here you have some tow. Right here you have some cargo. Over here you have some cargo tie-down hooks, a slot to slot in a partial shelf, another little cubby over here, and you can obviously fold down your seats for more cargo capacity if you need it, like so. And of course you have a big flat load floor because the seats fold mostly flat, although there is no lip, which is nice. You obviously have an LED cargo light, and that's pretty much it. The only thing that is missing on this is power folding seats like some of its competitors offer, especially when you get like an RS trim that's fully loaded. A Model Y, which costs about the same as that, does have power folding rear seats, so maybe that's a little bit not great. But honestly, I don't think the best way to get this vehicle is on the RS trim, and I'll explain that later when I talk about the trims and pricing. See, now it works. Why does it work now? Anyway, that was the feature I was trying to demonstrate earlier, which didn't work off camera several times, but it did work there. That is the hands-free power trunk opening. Anyway, as I was saying, that's a full overview of the Equinox inside and out. Let's talk about some pricing and trim levels before we get this thing out on the road and see how it drives. Future editor me cutting in with an overview of the pricing and trim levels on the 2026 Equinox EV. Now this is the LT1 trim, the very base model, and you can see that the price is $36,795 with destination, which is an $1,800 fee. So the actual MSRP is $34,995. Now that might seem a little bit expensive, but if you go to the matches near you and sort by price low to high, you will see that there's one available for $33,014. And that actually has a higher MSRP of $39,290 because it has some additional options. It does have the comfort package, the active safety package 2, and the radiant Rant tint coat, which is $495. So the actual savings on this particular model are $5,000 to $6,000 right off the bat. And I have seen better deals than this. I have seen very base models of the Equinox EV go for under $30,000, and I have seen a specific example where someone managed to get one for 23 grand with federal, state, and dealer rebates. Now that is not the most common thing in the world, but these can be bought very affordably, and I thought I might point that out because the base model honestly seems like the way to go if you're willing to live with a little bit more of a basic vehicle. Now let's actually talk about the actual trims and options on the Equinox EV. Now starting off with the LT1 front wheel drive, this is the most basic in the lineup. It does not have heated seats or heated steering wheel. The front driver's seat is manual and it does not have a power liftgate, but it gives you everything you need, like that 17.7-inch infotainment system, the same 85 kilowatt-hour battery pack, the 3-year, 36,000-mile bumper-to-bumper warranty, and the 8-year, 100,000-mile battery warranty. If you want all-wheel drive, that forces you to get the comfort package and the active safety package, which in total increases the price by $5,000, but the all-wheel drive add-on itself is actually only $3 grand because the other two packages are $2 grand. If you go into the options menu, scroll down, you will see that the comfort package adds an 8-way power driver's seat. Those two seats in the front will be heated, and a heated leather-wrapped steering wheel for $1,455. And when you option that, you also have to get the active safety package, which adds a 360-degree surround view camera, traffic sign recognition, and rear pedestrian alert. So if you get those packages, your total price is $38,795, and I think that is a pretty good value considering I just showed you that you can get this basically exact vehicle for $32,000 if you're willing to shop around a little bit. Now let's move on to the LT2 trim. The LT2 adds a couple nice features like the chrome trim and roof rails, the nicer EvoTex interior seating, which is heated as standard and has the nice blue trim with ambient lighting. You can also option on the LT2 trim the convenience package, which I misspoke in the review and called it the comfort package, but it's only the comfort pack on the base trim. The convenience package bumps your passenger seat up to 6-way power adjust. It does also add ventilated front driver and passenger seats, heated rear seats, a head-up display, dual zone automatic climate control, rear camera mirrors, a rear camera washer, which is weird because the base model also has that, 21-inch aluminum wheels that are shared with the RS, and a different LED running light signature when you walk up to the vehicle. Other things to note in here, you do have the Active Safety Package 3, which includes Super Cruise and the Enhanced Parking Assist, which will park the vehicle for you. Also down here, you will notice you have the trailering package for $1,495, which adds the trailer hitch and the trailer hitch cover, of course. If you want all-wheel drive on that LT2 trim, you can add it. The all-wheel drive will obviously cost an additional $3,000, and if you add the comfort convenience package and the active safety package, your total is just over $50,000, $52,350, which is pretty expensive. So honestly, in my opinion, the way to go is the base model. You also do have the RS trim if you want a little bit more styling, although it basically offers the exact same features as the LT. It's just a style package, more or less. And if you want the two-tone roof, you can actually get that on the LT. If you go to the exterior settings and go to the black roof for $495, or the white roof if you want that. Honestly though, I would just pass on both and go with the body color roof because I think it looks better. Overall, there's a lot of options on the Equinox EV, but in my opinion, the best way to go is the base trim in front wheel drive with the comfort package and the safety package, because like I mentioned, you can get them fairly affordably if you sort by price low to high and shop around a little bit. This one right here has one difference, the paint color, but it does have all the other options. And if you're willing to go used, these are incredibly cheap. You can get a 2025 model year with very low miles for well under $25,000 if you're willing to shop around. Anyway, let's get back to the review and take this on a drive. Okay, so that was a thorough overview of the pricing and trim levels of the Equinox EV. You can get these things really affordably with A, dealer rebates, and B, speccing it the correct way. But if you spec it really expensively, this can be over $50,000 out the door, which I wouldn't recommend. I don't think it's worthy of a $50,000 price tag, but a $35,000 price tag, I can get behind that. Let's hop behind the wheel and take this thing for a spin. All right, let's hop inside the Chevrolet Equinox EV and take it for a spin. Car automatically starts up when I get inside. Buckle my seatbelt. Gonna open up the garage door, shift the car into reverse so I can readjust. There is a fairly audible hum when you go into reverse, like a pedestrian warning sound. And I will say it does creep in reverse, but it does not creep in drive, which is a little bit annoying. Pretty decent acceleration there. Out of the garage, of course. Close the garage door behind me. Now let's get out on the road and see how the all-new, or I guess not all new, but fairly new Chevrolet Equinox EV drives. Pulling out onto the main road. Turn signal sound is actually fairly quiet. It's almost inaudible at any speed higher than about 60 miles an hour. Rolling into the throttle pedal, decent initial pickup, decent amount of torque steer. There's 40, 50 miles an hour. Regen, let's pull the regen paddle. A lot of off-throttle regen there, pulling that regen pedal. Check it into this corner. Little bit of inside wheel spin. 40, 50, 60 miles an hour, 70 miles an hour. Going uphill, 80. There's 90. It loses a little bit of power up top. Doesn't have a ton of hop. Doesn't have a top of front end. Now it doesn't have a ton of top end power, but it gets the job done. And this single front electric motor is one of the weakest points, I think, of the driving experience on this Equinox EV, because A, there's a lot of torque steer, and B, the power is just not all there when A, going up hills, and B, passing at high speed. So overall, not too bad. We're getting a little bit of rain on the windshield, so I'm gonna turn on the windshield wipers, which do wipe like this, which I do appreciate because it gets that middle section a little better. At 72 miles an hour, not a ton of road noise, pretty quiet in here. A little bit of rain noise from this left window over here, but that's fairly normal for cars. Sometimes you can hear the wind pelt the rain water against the window. That's the end of the rain. It was a very short rain cloud, I must say. The car does have traffic sign recognition, so it says the speed limit is 70. When we come up to this 55 zone, it should drop down to 55. There it goes, almost instantly, works perfect. At 55 miles an hour, there's basically no wind noise, and there is a little bit of road noise, although this is a fairly loud road surface, so I can forgive it for some of the road noise. And on smooth pavement, this thing is nearly silent, even at highway speeds. Rear visibility is not the best, but it's also not the worst. I can see basically everything you'd need to out of the rear window, and the rear wiper being there is a nice bonus because not a lot of electric vehicles have a rear wiper, so having one of those is actually pretty neat. And you can enable a setting to where if it's snowy, it'll automatically wipe the wiper when you put it into reverse, just to help you see a little bit better. So that is nice. One thing I am noticing as the sun is coming through the front windshield is that the dash likes to reflect in the windshield, causing a fair bit amount of glare, which is not the end of the world. I can ignore it, but if you even think about it a little bit, you will notice it, and it is a little bit distracting, but it's not the end of the world, and I think they said for 2027 they may fix that. So pull into this gas station and test out the turning radius. So I'm gonna go all the way over here and then crank the wheel. That is full lock. And the turning radius is actually fairly tight. Not bad for a front wheel drive EV, because usually the half shafts on the front suspension make it a little bit more difficult to turn sharply. But so far that actually seems pretty good. And how do I get out of here? Back up a little. I wish GM would add a toggle to turn off creep and reverse, because it's a little weird for it to not creep and drive, but for it to creep and reverse, because it sometimes catches me off guard. Like I'm expecting it to not move and then it starts moving. Low speed powertrain tuning, pretty good. A little bit of wheel spin there. I will say the traction management in this car is fairly aggressive. It doesn't allow you to spin the wheels a ton, but it will let you get brief bouts of wheel spin. A little bit of wheel spin, then it cut in. Hit a peak of 182 kilowatts, and we're catching up to this Chevy Cruze pretty quick. I will say in my powertrain analysis earlier in the video, I did say that it was a little bit too sluggish, but honestly, when the battery is higher charged, actually not bad at all. At low speeds, below 60 miles an hour, it has plenty of get up and go, to be honest. I can pass people. It's just my initial sense of the power was at a lower state of charge, because I'd just gotten back from the range test, and during the range test, you never floor it. So I really hadn't gotten a sense of the power at a high state of charge, but now that I'm at 98%, the power seems adequate. Although at high speeds, I would still like a little bit more performance. Full power, 60, it pulls pretty well. Not too bad for a front wheel drive EV that weighs as much as this does and only has 220 horsepower. Let's test out the adaptive cruise control system. Set. You can get this with Super Cruise, and that will automatically keep you in the middle of the lane, hands-free on mapped highways, and it will do lane changes. But I believe that's like a $3,200 option, and I don't think it's worth it for the vast majority of buyers. So honestly, I would just stick with the adaptive cruise control system. It did let off the throttle a little bit through that corner, but unlike a Tesla, it did not slam on the brakes, which I can appreciate. Now, like I mentioned in the suspension portion of this video, it is very comfortable in here. All the big bumps are dampened quite nicely, and the vehicle handles its weight very well. Where it doesn't do so well is in the twisty stuff, but it's definitely not bad. The low center of gravity of the battery pack does help a lot, but it still does have a fair amount of body roll, and the suspension is fairly soft, which I guess makes sense for a comfort-oriented EV. Let's go into the sport drive mode. It adds a little bit of fake motor noise. I'm gonna go around this corner at about 60 miles an hour, 55. On throttle out of the corner. Definitely limited power. Was only pulling about 140 kilowatts out of the corner when this can max out at about 180. Coming into this corner. Overall, it actually handles pretty competently. Just a little bit of body lean, and the tires are not super sporty, and this is quite heavy, so I wouldn't come into too many corners too quickly with this, because you can wash wide if the road's a little wet, but it's not designed to be a sporty vehicle. It's designed to be a comfortable vehicle, and it balances sportiness and comfort in a fairly decent way. I'm gonna go into this corner really slow and then see if I can get some inside wheel slip powering out of it, because this does have an open differential. So I'm going in about 32. I'm gonna whack it right now. Well, it's actually putting down the power fairly well. I do notice that the motor has reduced its output a little bit. Now it's only outputting about 167 kilowatts, which is fairly close to that 220 horsepower number I quoted earlier. I believe this can actually output to the wheels a little more than 220 horsepower, but only for brief bursts at low speeds, because it seems to peak at about 182 kilowatts, which is around 245 horsepower, and then it slowly drops down to about 170 over about 30 seconds or so. So as long as you're not ripping on it, the passing power is decent, but if you're consecutively ripping on it, you're going to lose a little bit of performance as the motor heats up, and that's what I mentioned in the battery pack, because since it's such low voltage, you have to pull a ton of current to get 181 kilowatts out of this battery. I will say the sport steering feel is a little bit heavy, and not in the best way. I actually prefer the lighter steering in most cars, or the lighter steering setting, I should say. Let's go back to my mode. I'm going to have the steering feel in normal, brake feel in normal, acceleration feel in sport, but the motor sound I like to keep off, because I don't like fake motor sounds in EVs. Just let it be quiet. Gonna mat it here. A little bit of inside wheel spin and some torque steer there. You can see it likes to pull the front of the vehicle around on power, which makes sense because it's front wheel drive, but that's something you have to keep in mind if you're trying to hustle this through a back road, which most people probably won't. But on the front wheel drive models, it torque steers fairly aggressively when you're turning and accelerating at the same time. That's why I think rear wheel drive should be the standard for most EVs, but it usually isn't a lot of the time. Let's go left here. A little bit of wheel spin, 182 kilowatts there, and then when you get above about 60 miles an hour, it drops down to about 170. So you do get that peak power boost down low, which is good. Oh, we got someone slowing down. I'm gonna pull the regen paddle. We are only getting 44 kilowatts of regen because the battery is fairly full. We're at 96% stated charge, but I have seen as much as 110 kilowatts of regen, which is a lot of regen through just a single motor on the front axle. I wonder what the regen slip control tuning is like in this vehicle. I hope it's not too bad, because in the snow, if you put 110 kilowatts of regen on the front wheels, you're going to lock up the tires. So hopefully GM has tuned that fairly well. I'm going to pull into this Dollar General, turn around, head back the other way. Just wanted to see how the vehicle felt on a little bit of a more straight road, and it feels very planted and comfortable. So far we have went, let me see, vehicle status, last 11.5 miles, 2.5 miles per kilowatt hour, which is not great, but I have been ripping on it, so that's not too bad. And we have used a total of 4.7 kilowatt hours, which makes sense. And let me check the trip info. Go to current trip, we've done 11.7 miles in 15 minutes. Close that out. I realize I left the rear seat down. That might be causing some more road noise than I think is typical. There you go. Put that back up. Made basically no difference since there's no parcel shelf, but thought it's something I might as well do because I just now realized it. I looked in the camera feed, I'm like, oh, the back seat's down. Let's see, if I go to the traction control menu and go to drive and park, traction control, ESC off and traction control off, I think it does disable one pedal drive when you do that because it is creeping now, which is a bit interesting. So we'll see if we're gonna be able to spin some wheels pulling out of the stop sign, but nothing to complain about. That guy's flooring it. I like that. If I can get some wheel spin here. A little bit, but it cut power even with traction control off. Now this is a really rough textured road, so we should be able to see what the NVH is like. I can hear some of my loose articles in the car rattling around, but other than that, hearing a little bit from the seatbelt rattling up against the pillar, but other than that, not too bad. Or maybe it's the seatbelt tension now that I think about it. I noticed that this center armrest will rattle a little bit if you're not resting your arm on it. I think the latch just has a little bit of slack in it. If you want to fix that, you could probably put some foam, like little sticky foam strips in the gap between the console and the lid, and that'll probably quiet it down. But this is a really, really coarse road, so like I'm not surprised that there are some rattles in here. Basically every vehicle that you'll drive down here, even if it's a Maybach, will have a rattle from somewhere, because this is just an extremely coarse road texture. Pull in here and let this Nissan Sentra get out of the way. Obviously we are gonna have to do a 3-pointer because this is a narrow road, but does not want to fry the tires, which is good, but there we go, accelerating. Little bit of torque steer at high power output. I think the all-wheel drive version of this car would solve that problem, but overall the fit and finish in here, like the materials are nice, the seats are fairly comfortable, although they are on the flatter side, which I don't particularly like, but I do know people that swear by GM seats, and I know some people, including myself, that really don't like GM seats, but these ones in particular are okay. Up here we're gonna have a train track. I'm gonna hit it at roughly 60 miles an hour. I'm actually gonna see if I can set cruise, which this Nissan's going way too slow. Okay, I guess we'll hit it at 40. Fairly comfortable. That is a really aggressive train track too. Like, I swear I got airborne in my Model 3 once going over that. Or at least close. Good throttle response. Good throttle response. One thing that is nice is even if you can't get max regen, the braking feel is still the same because it blends in friction brakes to make up for the loss of regen. And this does have brake-by-wire, I believe, or it does have blended braking of some form. It might not be brake-by-wire, but as you dig into the brake pedal, it'll add regen before digging into friction brakes. You know, I'm gonna go left and do some city driving. There's 180 kilowatts. That seems to be the max. And the 2026 model does have a slightly higher horsepower rating. I think they bumped it up by 7 or something like that, but that shouldn't make too much of a difference. What makes more of a difference is honestly just the weather and whether or not you're high state of charge like I am right now. Now that we're on a slightly smoother road surface, the rattles have pretty much gone away. I don't really hear much. Good throttle response at low speeds. It is in the sport throttle response setting, but it is in my mode. If I put it into normal, let's see if that changes. If I go to normal mode, then smash it. Ooh, throttle pedal definitely backed off when I hit that. Honestly feels about the same when you floor it, but the tip in is a little bit, like that's about half throttle, and it definitely rolls into it a little bit more when you're not in sport mode, which makes sense. Cruising around at low city speeds, let's put it back into my mode just because I prefer the throttle sensitivity of sport mode, even though I don't like the sound of sport mode. G-Wagon, very quiet at low speeds. The only thing I can hear is a little bit of the blower motor, but the blower motor is still quiet. It's actually just the airflow that's making some noise, and the pedestrian warning sound. Little bit of wheel spit. Spip? Spin. Can't speed. Speed. I can't talk. I meant speak. I can't speak. I also can't speed either because that would be illegal. Set the adaptive cruise system. And this does, of course, have lane keep assist, so it will bounce you in between the lines if you veer off. Here's our, is this our Nissan Sentra lady? Driving freaking 20 miles an hour? Oh, it automatically increased the speed because the speed limit increased. That's neat. I believe that is a setting that you can toggle on and off inside the settings. And it automatically maintained my offset. So I was going 36 and a 35 back there. And when it went up to a 45 zone, it increased it to 46 miles an hour. So that's actually pretty smart. And then when you hit this 55 zone, it'll probably go up to 56 miles an hour. Yep, 56 miles an hour. It is accelerating fairly smoothly. Taking a little longer than I would though to get up to the speed. But honestly, that's probably better because you don't want to scare some people. You're like, why is the car accelerating so fast? Even though this thing isn't that fast of an accelerating vehicle. Still at 93% state of charge. Let's check our trip status. So we've done 19.3 miles and we've only burned 7%. And that's at 2.8 miles per kilowatt hour, which is pretty inefficient for the speeds, but that's because we've been flooring it and testing handling capabilities. So efficiency actually seems pretty decent. I think you could see well over 300 miles of range at 55 to 60 miles an hour, which is the speed we're going right now. My 70 mile an hour range test, I got roughly 267 miles if you extrapolate out the last 4% that we didn't actually use. And that's actually pretty good range considering there was a 14 mile an hour wind that we had to deal with, and it was a little bit hot outside. It was about 92 degrees. So you could probably see 280 to 290 miles of highway range in ideal conditions, which is honestly exceptional for the price point. Turn up the AC a little bit. It's getting a little warm in here. By a little bit, I mean all the way. AC does work very well in this car because GM does not skimp on the air conditioning system. And that's something they do in every one of their vehicles all across the board. They have the best AC, I think, in the business, or at least it gets close. It's probably top 3 air conditioning systems in any new vehicle that I can think of. The only thing that I think is better in terms of AC, not the AC performance, but the AC vent placement would be Tesla with the vent coming through the steering wheel, because that just is awesome, even though it is computer controlled. But the AC system itself in Tesla is not as well performing as in this car, so you get what you pay for, or I guess what you get what you don't pay for with the Tesla, because it is more expensive. Right now I am cold. Just about to end our driving section of the video. We've done 21.9 miles, 2.9 miles per kilowatt hour. We've used 7.7 kilowatt hours total. 5% of that has went to climate, and 95% of it has gone to driving. Very strong regen. That's gonna be the end of the driving segment of this video. Let's cut to the outro and give you guys my final thoughts. So there you go, that is my full in-depth review of the 2026 Equinox EV. Now, while it is a little compromised in the battery charging department specifically, this as a package for the price that these are going for is an exceptional value. You can pick up an Equinox EV base trim for under 30K if you're willing to do some shopping around for different dealerships. And I've seen people get these as low as 23 grand with dealer rebates. Now, that is not common at all, but it is possible. And for that price point, this is unbeatable value. And even at $35,000, which is the starting price of this vehicle, I still think it is very unbeatable value. You get a large battery pack for a lot of range. You get a very comfortable interior, good software, a decent amount of cargo space, good back seat room, and it looks good. It doesn't look like a blob, unlike a Model Y in a way. The Model Y is a good looking vehicle, but it's not for everyone, albeit this isn't for everyone either, but it's still a great looking car, and I would highly recommend it to anyone looking for a new EV. That being said, there are a couple flaws with it, like I mentioned, the low voltage battery. and the lacking of power in this particular front-wheel drive model, but you can remedy that with all-wheel drive. And other than that, there's not really anything I would change about it other than maybe fixing some minor things like the dash reflection and adding a NACS charging port. Overall, this is a great package for a buyer who does a lot of from home to work, long distance commuting, not using DC fast chargers. And this CAN DC fast charge just is not gonna be the best. But if you do that often, this is the perfect vehicle. Again, it's comfortable, quiet, and fairly inexpensive. So that is gonna be the end of this video. Comment, like, and subscribe. Obviously, comment down below telling me what you guys think of the 2026 Equinox EV, and I'll see you in the next video.